Right, and so we can get right on into this one. So, political plot twist brought to you by B1 Brother Moses. This one doesn't need a lot of prepared data and information. I can just share the screen. And because sharing the screen is pretty simple, I shouldn't get this one wrong too much. And it shouldn't matter whether or not my face is on or not, because it's that time of year, right? Midterm elections. And a lot of folks don't like to go into this part of the content. So I'll keep it way less than an hour. I want to provide the information from a national, state, local level. And in so doing, I'll keep it very minimal. From the national level for the midterms, I guess the Get Out to Vote campaign is huge. And I've started to see some streamlining of the message around how do you get Black issues on the ballot. And so midterms is a good pilot for testing certain messaging, as well as positioning certain questions and agenda items to the legislators. And so I'll give you what I got there on a national level. State-wise, I'm here, B1 Network out of Arizona. And so our state, we're looking at Senators Mark Kelly and Blake Masters. And then for governor, Carrie Lake and Katie Hobbs. And then at a local level is where they start looking at propositions, which won't be relevant to everyone. But I do have some information that once we break it down, given the time that we have, we can understand the process of how to get more Black issues onto the election. So we use this time as a point of reflection. We capture these moments with examples. And any of those folks who would be in the chat willing to also provide an example in any of those areas, national, state, or local, will also have an opportunity to join as well. All right, and so I'm going to run through the information. It's going to go pretty quick. And you know, Brother Moses does have the tendency to speak pretty quick. But thanks for rocking. Thanks for watching. We'll go through the political plot twist in the same faction. You know the underlying themes. I keep it Black first. And this conversation isn't for everyone. A lot of folks are still struggling with where they see themselves in America, let alone as an American. And so they would hope that this part of the conversation is not shared and only the headline topics brought to you by the media, the results and the outcome is all. But to be the change we need to see, I'll go on and put it on the screen. That first window will be See, this is an option. Once you get all the windows, even when you have it organized, it's still like, which one do you go with first? Yeah. All right, let's go on the national level. National level in Blackness. Now, for that means actually looking at what's personal to me, which is land and land grants. What is a land grant institution? How that goes throughout the nation on a national level. The Mitchell Center, which is a good one. I thought this was in Texas, but now they have the main campus. There's a Mitchell out of Texas A&M who deals with inheritance tax, so Texas as well. But this one, she gave her presentation on the value of teaching, research, and outreach within land grants. And then Carter, the name Carter is also going to be symbolic. Carter is going to be a symbolic name, as well as Jackson. Mississippi when it comes to land and land grants and what's happening, land grant universities. Um, uh, Curtis Jackson took his name back, is no longer 50 Cent, was the meme that was on thisis50.com. But the Carter is another one of the billionaire boys. And so when we're understanding teaching and research and these keywords or this algorithm about teaching or institutions and how that relates to land grants, understand again with everyone being sent home and the primary hub of an institution being, we had to revision it to where the backyard was now the playground once again, if you were a homeowner. And so then redlining and all the different issues and forcing people back into isolated small niche communities again, we started seeing the Black experience being co-opted by other groups as they had to personalize their own reflections of not being able to send their children to a public institution, and then having to internalize that and say, well, what will we do with children while we're at work? And they're in a work at home environment and their children are at home, not at school, because the society shut down. And everyone else got to experience Blackness and benefit from it to the extent where those homeowners were able to receive different grants and things. They were able to use keywords such as research. They were able to use key things when they were writing up their grant proposals, such as outreach and then connecting with their community, being able to stay connected, which is why even in the rural community, they received corporate partnerships with companies like AT&T for broadband capabilities, and the rural community itself, which was very far reached, those who had already moved out into the land. But now that had always been open to everyone else, but we only focus on HBCUs and a Black first experience. But for everyone else, and they talk about, well, land is an access to wealth and all of these different things. It's a different experience when the people who have multiple properties, one residential property, redlining out of one residential property created a stigma. But for a world that didn't know such, who had lake property, who had other properties that they were told they couldn't even travel to in a global pandemic, however you want to say that word. I'll stutter and get it out one way or the other. But public land, when it became super restricted, then forced people into their isolated spaces to say, well, now that we have access to, the word access is another keyword search. The vital role of land grant universities and cooperative extension in supporting farmers in the United States since the Civil War has been well documented. How philanthropy can truly support land justice for Black communities. Nonprofit news was the other thing that they've always said about the Black nonprofit space, or even the HBCUs, but by proxy, the HBCUs were teaching the teachers or training the trainers, and many of the HBCUs put out most of those. And even though the numbers are small, but it is the numbers of people who wanted to be socially engaged, whether they were in the rural community or going back into the Black community. Other than that, you have these niche communities like, the allies communities. And then in the military, they have, people are starting to they're benefiting from technology. And the way that they benefit from technology is using those very words on their applications and so applications apply not only for students and FAFSA, they also apply for small businesses. And many people realize that access to public land is a public good and a benefit, but that in order to attain such things, when their children would go on field trips, somebody else is providing transportation. The Black experience has always known the struggle of being able to get transportation to the underserved communities. And having to use said partnerships relied upon being able to train people to write, because they didn't otherwise write the pathway for even the bus route or for a budget for the bus people to serve the general public. in the underserved communities. Those people had trained their peers to become trainers of trainers for their areas. And the rural community has essentially always been a great usurper of the land grant university privilege. And while grants could be available in Delaware for forestry up to $5,000, essentially, this entire budget request would have been protected under the Omni Bill. And that's where the billions are spent. And on a national level, or getting down to the state level, this grant request process is open to minorities. And oftentimes, many of these projects, they are really looking to partner. And it's that we haven't done a good job in training the trainers on making the English part or the written part of the process easier. So when it gets to the local levels, the local land grant writers, they're swamped out. And we have to show you what that looks like from the 3 layers. So that's on a national level when it comes to land grants and land grant programs and things like that. That's the most recent update from there, as we see, November 8th. But in order to follow things like that, I also wanted to show that it does take following multiple media, such as the Baltimore Sun. They are closest to Washington, D.C. without being super contaminated by the D.C. politics, but they do have a black demographic that's large enough to still be relevant in order to report on the Black experience on a national type level. The other platforms for media that I use are LinkedIn, because what the professional community is talking about is relevant, as they are the ones creating pathways for all allies to include Black first. And when corporate America is not creating those pathways, that's when we say, well, the Boule and all of those other folks who receive their education being a pathway to upward mobility. And they learned English and writing and arithmetic and leadership professional development skills, carried them into corporate America. From there, it's Bloomberg politics on a national level. But I just really try to stick with Bloomberg from its economic lens. Economics then peels into, from a national level again, what the markets are doing. While many in the conscious community focus on Harlem, there's Earn Your Leisure, who have to be one of the most prolific in traveling with the financial literacy on an international level. But they've been a gem for us on a national level when we say, who are the Black folks who are doing these things? So I can focus on the Baltimore Sun. Bloomberg, one of the reasons why I do look at Bloomberg, again, Mike Bloomberg and the Johns Hopkins University, Johns Hopkins, that's another type of Baltimore type connection that many people may not relate to, but it relates to their being able to provide boots on the ground, real-time data and statistics in the medical space. And anything related to medical has to deal with the Black experience. Thus, Obamacare is the legacy. But do you actually care? It's going to be bigger than that. And that's also New York, but it's really the politics side that I don't go towards. Johns Hopkins being the university there, though, that one is where there's a lot of not just symbolism, but when we talk about creating access or pathways for Black first thinkers, Black first talent, Black first labor, Black first media. Well, Bloomberg has a strong hold on that, as we understand. All right, so that's my personal connection to the national level, but we still have to walk it down, right? Because there's so much more to that. And so the Education Trust joint letter supporting funding for post-secondary student success shows us how grants, if we take it away from land grants and take it away from just being the rural community, and now we're going to focus more on a national, this is the way that this process works lens. But stay with us, we're still talking about political capital, and a lot of people can't do this. This was released or published, it's still media, November 7th, 2022. And as we see, we can download the full letter. When it is addressing land from a Black perspective, they do have to use the actual doxing or whatever, the legitimate titles, the honorable, and they have to make them appropriate to who they are sending their message to. So the Honorable Rosa De Lauro is the chairwoman, House Appropriate. In fact, rather than me going through the entire thing, I've shared the message. I've shared the link and I've shared where it's found. I also downloaded it. Downloading it helps because, man, I don't be wanting to say all this. But as of November 4th, 2022, it was eligible or accessible for folks with disabilities.
November 4th, 2022. The Honorable Rosa DeLauro, Chairwoman, House Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health, and Human Services and Education, House Appropriations Committee, Washington, D.C. 20510. The Honorable Patty Murray, Chairwoman, Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health, and Human Services and Education, Washington, D.C. 20510.
Now we can go through that,
Honorable Patty Murray,
or
Chairwoman,
we could get to the information
Senate
because
Committee
it
on
does allow to
the
skip forward.
Ranking Member, House Appropriations
But there's the
Subcommittee on
ranking
Labor,
member
Health,
of the
and Human
House
Services,
as
the
well as the
Honorable Royce
ranking
Lund,
member of
Ranking
the
Member.
Senate. There's the
Senate
House
Subcommittee
Appropriations,
on Labor,
and then there's
Health,
the Senate
and Human
Committee.
Services, Washington, D.C.
So they addressed them to both,
Ranking Member Blunt,
but
Chair
that's
DeLauro,
really
and
4.
Ranking Member Cole.
All right.
The undersigned organizations, representing a diverse coalition of education associations, civil rights groups, think tanks, researchers, and stakeholders with strong interest in improving college graduation rates.
You see what they do? Now I got to show you that they've already attached it to the 200 million for post-secondary student success grants. So they're only looking at the 200 million. This is the part that I wanted to report on, and then I'm gonna move forward. For the tiered evidence language contained. So when they say they are in support of tiered evidence language, they're saying they want this 200 million that's been earmarked. And when they say we, this is the coalition building or the diverse, the allies or whoever else it is who are stakeholders. B1 is diverse enough to know who our Black First stakeholders are, and to be able to do this, it is just very unfortunate that once we whittle it down to the principles that we would want to stand on, that's where we start drawing the lines. But for the protection of our children, this one is the young adults. This one is for that age group when they've graduated high school and now they're getting ready to go to college, or they're getting ready to move into their own small business ventures and they want to be the institution since they've learned more about technology and how to use technology than we've learned in all of our lifetime just being users and the originators of said technologies. Our children may not need to be a student, essentially. With their experiences, they may need to move into applying for one of these grants for their own small business. And here's where it starts getting tricky in politics, which is why many people don't want to go into this. It's because what are they actually advocating for? And if you don't listen, and she can say it or I can say it or whatever the voice, the headlines will not tell you is that the tiered evidence language. And so it sounds good. The budget's already there. And here's how they get you, gotcha.
Rates. Write again to express our support for appropriating at least $200 million for
At least.
Secondary Student Success Grants, PSSG, in fiscal year 2023, FY23, and for the tiered evidence language contained in the House Labor HHS Education Appropriations Report. In addition, we believe that the final language should include labor market outcomes,
because they don't care about that,
college retention and completion, as requested in the President's FY23 budget. We, the undersigned organizations.
In addition, we believe that the final language should include labor market outcomes along with college retention and completion. So if you don't, as a Black first, or as somebody who's Black, or as somebody who's one of the underserved, I think they use BIPIC, which is once they start expanding Black to include everybody else for whatever reason, we then end up turning around not knowing how to write the grant, let alone if we end up complaining once all of this money starts going to major corporations, or in the case of Black conservatives, if it goes to one major organization, Black Lives Matter. And while they can start to use limiting language, like they want the language to include, well, what about the labor market outcomes? What about college retention and completion? HBCUs stand to get pummeled when they start earmarking funding based on the language in the appropriations. The tiered evidence language that would suggest if you are not meeting your college retention, if your students are not completing in 5 years, that if your network of alumni are not getting them into those colleges, that you would again be shooting yourself in the foot if you did not read what was happening in plain sight. And while this is just what they believe, they're telling you that this is what had already been written, and they're saying, yeah, we support that and it should be included. And then we wonder why the HBCU systems then, while all the models and expansion programs and funding, and I thought this stuff was meant for, no. It's because when they start coalition building, they've already taught their peers what they're fighting for. And you won't see a single LLC Black serving on many of their lists. You'll see religious-based institutions. You'll see all of the ones that don't really include us if you're Black first. If you're Black only, you're definitely not seeing those people on these lists because, once again, they don't believe in these type of partnerships and they're probably not on my page. They don't understand how what is written actually impacts the future. And yes, at some point they'll need to complain because they won't be willing to actually look at another example of a House Resolution 9244 supporting market access to Reinvigorate Trade Act of 2022 by Representative Costa Jim of California, a Democrat. It is from the Committee on House Agriculture, which is just somebody who's been elected by California to have a conversation with the same people I showed you they wrote a letter to. And while they often write these bills to have those conversations, they aren't even being heard because we don't have Black people even writing the letters or Black coalitions coming together to write the letter that become this bill that get heard, let alone writing the letter directly to the right people to get the information passed. But it's midterms, and this is a good pilot for people who don't know to learn how, and for those who don't believe in this to just declare it by getting off my page. But it's written in text as well as available in PDF. House Resolution 9244, which is to amend the Agricultural Trade Act of 1978, which is all they're essentially doing when they want to amend the omnibus bill to be more restrictive against Black first and against Black only. Well, you don't have to be more restrictive of Black only. Why the fuck? You don't have to restrict somebody that told you from the start they are separate from this system. They're going to, by magic, create their own land and create their own programs. They don't have to write it down. They don't need actual committees and boards of directors. They don't need budgets and treasurers. They don't need to abide by Robert's Rules of Order. They don't need any accredited institution support if those accredited institutions do business outside of Black only. But for those who actually do believe that Black only is laughable in America and it doesn't exist at any measurable level with consistency. There's also HR 9244, another example of the language when they are saying what they want to change in the omnibus bill, once again, which has already appropriated the money in the first place to anyone who wants to take advantage of any of this citizenship or these programs. If you want to create a program, if you're the business that wants to create a program, if you're a network of people who are already associated with businesses, if you wanted to start a coalition, if you wanted to form a committee, if you had a whole council, however it is, we're still just talking about communication and media and what it is you want to say. And when the other groups are forming their committees to work against Black or to work in their own advantage, however it is it comes out, I look at the ones that are looking to work against Black and I call those out. And they have ones that are actually written with Black men, like to study Black men, written right there inside of these bills. But the omnibus, that's non-negotiable, which is why I put it on the national process. Agricultural trade, that's on a national level. Whether it's for education or land, all of these things have to be written down. This one, Supporting Market Access to Reinvigorate Trade Act of 2022, is called the SMART Act. And whereas the example I was referring to earlier is a group, a coalition, that's referring to $200,000 and saying, hey, it should be related to more than just whether or not your institution is graduating people on time. It should also be related to, are they getting jobs once they graduate from your institution? And while the rest of the communities are saying, yeah, we are for that, the HBCUs may be the only ones that say, hey, we're still struggling to make that a reality because of funding. And the HBCU grads are like, oh, well, as alumni, we just got to work together because we know the federal government ain't here to help us. And I call bullshit. I don't even see our names listed on these as households or as benefactors of these programs. And it gets offensive when we start looking at the Congressional Black Caucus and the Chamber of Black Congress and start seeing that they are more invested in Africa than they are many times in their own spaces and local communities at a state level. But we're not at the state level yet. Hold on, we'll get there. Because they start to tell you that Congress finds the following between 1977 and 19, the export promotion programs of the Department of Agriculture in this section, just in this section, referred to as the programs. Oh, those government programs and those women on welfare. But just this section have added on average $9.6 billion per year to the value of United States agricultural exports, equal a total of nearly $648 billion, big old Bentley Bs, or 13.7% in additional export revenue. Export, which means adding value to the world, not bringing in shea butter from Africa because they closed off textiles, but businesses that export. And in this case, this is still not us. We know when it comes to the land and the land grants and the land grant opportunities, we have a long way to go. But when it comes to politics, we end up getting shot in the foot because we don't have anybody who's willing to report what's actually going on with real numbers and real data. And even the people who do, well, that sector is not appreciated with likes and subscribes. Between 2002 and 2019, the programs have added up to 45 billion in gross economic output and 22.3 big old Bentley B billion in gross domestic product. And our challenge is to be able to quantify that number in gross economic output for Black alumni of HBCUs who would be looking to take advantage of this next level of citizenship, which is the ownership of acres, and answering the question, what would you do with these acres now that you are not the 6X generation slave and it is yours? If you want to build a castle or a plantation style home, if you believe in the French style or the Elizabethan, with open and fair, equitable access to this same opportunity, what would you write down as the value of your business? Once you had to put your business on paper and they said, there it is. You do understand that signing this contract for land is in perpetuity, right? That it does come with conservation requirements and conservation easements, right? That the use of said use in any business case has to be on board and legal, right? That in order for tax exemptions to even qualify, that is a partnership. That if the men of your community would call you a traitor for applying, that's something that as a woman, a Black woman, who are the most educated and who did leave en masse due to COVID, and for all intents and purposes, were the ones denied said claims. In any event, let's get to the state level, because I could stay here for the longest, but appropriations, which is the giving away of money or the giving away of land, in this case, it's related to labor, health, human services, which is what a lot of people want to do when they deal with how do I want to help? I just want to help people. So what is your business? And what does your business do? Education. I just want to help people. So you just want to provide the trainings. You want to provide the resources for them to empower themselves. Got it. All right. Now that you know what your business wants to do, how much money do you need for your business to be able to do it? Because whether you believe in the banking system or you believe that you are a nonprofit, you're going to need the capital to make something like this happen. And while other people are just requesting the money, it is the Black community who feel like they are committing they are an imposter if they request the money to provide, to do exactly what they want to do, provide the services, health and human services, and to partner with the open community and the general public, using their own social media, using their own skills and resources, their own experiences, education level, using whatever that is to provide their services. Oh, but this is midterms. And B1 Brother Moses has now provided that information. We know what it is. I don't want to hear the excuses going forward about reparations or a reparative model. I don't want to hear about equity. I don't want to hear about your plantation broken mentalities. Because even in the midterms, you have all that you need to make the decision that you need on empowering yourself to repair the community from a national level. And now we're going to move into the state. We see them being able to request big millions. So going forward, I ought to just be able to show you who's actually receiving the big millions, right? I ought to just be able to look and say, look, there goes the another Pelpuki project requesting big millions. Going forward, another agricultural project requesting big millions. Another small business granted big millions. Going forward, right? My content should be relevant going forward from this midterm, because I've always said it. I've debated it. I've stood my ground against Black conservatives like ABL, who can go live. I said the same thing and debated him when it came to respecting women's choice. Women have lost that at the Supreme Court level, but they still have to fight. At the national level, I've told you, I've said it's about land and macroeconomics, right? So when I start reporting from what I get my Google alerts on, when we say the Pelpuki project, they say privacy and, oh, you shouldn't redistribute. But they're the ones who stole all the land, right? And in media, they're the ones who can tell me not to talk no more, right?
It's a lifestyle,
right?
And
nah, man, they can't steal from me both my right to say that the land is available, especially when I'm talking about the primary sources. And I'm using another media source that told me, and I told Google to tell me. So unless you want to tell Google to stop telling me, don't tell me not to tell my people. And essentially, if I get the invite when the White House is saying, hey, we need help telling more people about these programs, and I stream it live, and I only get 5 or 6 people watching it anyway, then let me get my 5 or 6 and stop hating on me because the people that are in my network are able to get 3,000 live. But all the people in my network want are just the bullet notes. And they may not mind listening to me, and they may not mind actually reading through when I share it on my screen. But it hurts that I would be the one getting censored at this low. I'm so far downstream in media that me being censored doesn't seem to make sense. Like I did the report on 200 million, but here it says these funds include 800 million for 11,000 delinquent direct and guaranteed borrowers that had their accounts brought current. Y'all want to talk about reparations from a lens other than what I told you we were working on socially, politically, and economically. And just because you were not having the conversations, and just because my mentor was, didn't mean that I lost the debate. And just because I shared the information when my mentor was having the conversation with the current Attorney General of not just the Secretary of Agriculture, but he went to the Treasury as well, and I shared that as well. Those won't get many views, but that is what we're working on, and it still connects to the Freedmen Bureau, and it still connects to the Lincoln assassination, so it still connects to Chicago. Oh, but Chicago, New York, and Massachusetts would fall off of people's radar unless they got the story from Revolt, P. Diddy himself, expanding cannabis through one $185 million acquisition of 2 major cannabis industry businesses. Y'all wouldn't understand that connectivity unless you understand California and the Democrats in California opening Blackness and the Black experience of reparations up to everyone. California was the one who passed the legislation around the Crowns Act, declaring it's just another declaration of or what was written about hair not being used in discriminatory practices. Harvard may be the one that does the study that says Black sounding names. Harvard may be the one that does the studies on implicit bias in employment. Chicago is the one that links it to education. Chicago Booth University, Chicago, and then Northwestern also is another link in education, but now we're into different states. Now we're onto the state impact. They're the ones who focus on the education as well. Northwestern is the one who focuses it on the lens of small business or nonprofit business. Now, these are major big institutions that will compete if your son is the one who has courses that are available that would help streamline education. But what we are starting to notice is that it wasn't just COVID, but enrollment across the board has not started to increase at either a four-year public or private institution. And similar to the flight from corporate, and similar to the experience of Black women in corporate on why they have those skills. Why didn't they just go to another corporation? Why did they go to entrepreneurship? It's because not only did they have the skills, they had a network of people who understood that value already. But what they needed was the funding, capital. And I'm saying, when those funds became available and were co-opted on a national level, states then said, hold on to the major corporations. And they allocated big budgets for the major corporations, but they said, hold on. And they had to find ways to get to the individual families. And their only way of doing so was to assume a reparative model that says everybody is going to be harmed by this pandemic. And there is nothing that the government can do about it. The government is responsible and is not prepared. And so they had to adopt a socialist system in real time, the other spectrum 100%. And other people may think that capitalism was the major driver. They're stuck on the different algorithm, different key terms. They thought democracy was the bigger driver. But those were never the case. Once you've been educated, those were just the algorithm. That was just the simplified manner of saying something in order for it to be monetized. Or the algorithm, the process to which turns it into a 0 or a 1. It's either a yes or it's a no. It creates a dichotomy amongst decision making when it's still a Black experience or a white experience. And everybody else is just understanding the gray, but they're given access to democracy in America. They're afforded access to capitalism in America, but they're not Black or white. They're not a 0 or a 1. They're not a have-not or a have. They are the great other and the experiment that is the hybrid model. But I told you I could rant on that all day. These are the numbers on your screen. And this is how it's written when it gets to amending what had already been written, which is the omnibus bill. And the omnibus bill addresses how much money we give to land, while people are talking about reparations and they own the land. Well, then why wouldn't you deal with the USDA, numbnuts? Reparations for anybody, they always argue on every area, it's land. And in that case, are you looking to be a landowner for use as conservation? Because the Biden administration deals with how do you use land from a conservation lens. There are the landowners, or the people who are the parent accounts, who have so much freaking land that the government, even taxing it, is like, tax it for what if it's not going to do anything? Taxing 0 at 100% gets you how much? Providing negative incentives for foreign owners gives us how much? So if you make that land accessible to a Chinese corporation, for example, instead of like Brazil, the Brazilian government, in order to maintain global food sustainability, the Brazilian government or a corporation there within with the approval of the Brazilian government can be number 4 on land use in America regarding a specific sector. And that's the chicken that we eat. And Black folks will complain about Black Americans, not Black folks. If you say Black folks, now you're being non-inclusive of Black Brazilians. But Black Americans, then, the ones who are the underserved in America, the disenfranchised, those whose, if it was 1910s, I'm saying that's probably at least at least one great grandparent, depending on how old you are or where you're at in your journey. I'm a millennial. So that's at least one great grandparent who would have been the child parent of the landowners when Black land ownership was going up. They said it peaked and it never recovered. If that's such the case, and that's what we're talking about, and then that's where all of the redlining and all of the FHA loans, and now we're fighting for one residential property and are not able to benefit from commercial property or the Industrial Revolution and the businesses. The technical revolution's already here. I'm saying our children are already able to do what they would end up going to school for, to be the teacher. They could be the teacher and the institution today. And the operations costs, when they used to would have given the federal assistance to the institution that's there, our children are now providing courses to each other in real time. And it was because of COVID that they had to move into a space of learning on their own, independent or assisted learning environments, or homeschooling. And if it was only the technology that enabled them to learn from home, and they took the education, they dismantled it and said, you don't need access to a physical teacher. You don't need access to a physical classroom if there is a space in your own home. See, the Black experience. A space in a church basement, the Black experience. Or as they've broken it out, I think it's like BIPOC. It's like BIPOC. I'm not familiar with the term, but that's the one they use. Additional funds can support up to 7,000 direct loan borrowers who use the Farm Service Agency's disaster set aside. You see what they did? Not only did they request money for whatever it was they were doing, they needed money for their business operations, and then they needed money for their disaster set aside programs. During the pandemic, man, they needed money for money in case they needed money. And once they got that money, now they need more money because inflation is starting to set in, which means it's being even more depressing to distressed farmers. So they need more money again. Now, this wasn't my announcement. I just follow the USDA. This is $3.1 billion in assistance, whereas the first example was only $200 million. That's just one update in what Google sent on this day. Or we can talk about the USDA naming a Caribbean CEO for fruits and vegetables. It'd be interesting when the appointment of Angel Santiago, you'd be like, well, how in the hell did that happen? You mean out of all the Caribbeans, this is the Caribbean that you found to appoint? They'd be like, yeah, that's going to be my advisor. And they'd be like, but how did that happen? And how long will this appointment be? It's going to be valid until October 2024. Oh, he got a 2-year appointment. Yeah, y'all got to get ready for what happens in 2024, and you need to use the midterms as a way of doing so. Because again, it's only just a committee. You're like, man, this be the first time we got a Puerto Rican, man. They celebrating that, which I don't laugh. I just know it's a lot of Black folks in America who are like, well, when it comes down to it, we need Black politicians to be in a space, to be on these committees and these councils and all of this shit. You're like, be on a committee for what? Committee members represent more than 25 sectors, including. So what does your child want to focus on, or your child account? Or what does this Black First And then finally, after the Black first, the people who are Black only, if the Black only are willing to listen, to Black first, they Freudian slip. Black only people seem like the only people they'd be willing to target is Black only. And that's when it's good or bad. So that I knew there was something I wanted to say on my last stream. When they claim to be Black only, that's where you'll also hear them complain. Their number one complaint is Black on Black all the time. Because those Black only people be wanting to target Black people only too. Never mind that. We'll get back into it. 25 sectors. If you're Black first, though, you understand that your child has to compete in all of this anyway. And so being able to focus on the resources that may be able to help your child only work to your advantage when we already know what these conscious quacks are quacking about. So here are the sectors, or just to get an idea. Organic and non-organic producers, shippers, wholesalers, retailers, industry trade associations, importers, which again, when it comes to importers, I'll beat them up. I'll beat them up all day, every day, because obviously I am pro-export. Get these people the fuck out of here. I am on this side, but I know that we have both. I know we have both. I say as an exporter, the ability for us to use the raw materials that are here and to create value from the raw materials we have, versus importers who say, oh, I'd be so much better if I was able to get those resources from somebody else, in the sense of labor and resources. Now, the federal government, in a sense, are claiming the benefits of your American citizenship. The federal treasury is different than the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is those people who want to argue the banking argument. The federal note, or what they wrote on the money, that's for somebody else who's too deep in the quacking. I'm into silver rights. I am pro silver rights. So the people who want to, well, you need to get your bag. Yeah, y'all be going too far. Here's what I'm talking about. Processors, food service providers, because my grandmother, this is where I get the deepest connection. My grandmother was the cafeteria worker. If she didn't make those meals and prepare those meals and serve those meals, then that high school was no longer attractive. Those students were going to skip class. This was the great unifier in an underserved community, the breakfast and lunch program. It's a great unifier for the Black church to this day. And many small Black businesses still focus on food. Now, our Caribbean brothers, they come over and major in hospitality and such, because we still feel like we shouldn't have to go to an HBCU or any school to learn how to be farmers. That's Booker T. Washington, who I'm pro, even though in life or actuality, I was talented 10th, a beneficiary of W.E.B. Du Bois. Pro-quack-wise, I understand Carter G. Woodson, the miseducation of the Negro. Gotta bite my tongue. I am learning to understand the miseducation. And even at that, when I say I am learning, I experience this every day. And even on every day, I'm still learning up to the real time. I still haven't learned what my children can teach about technology and how to use it, like expeditiously. They know so many shortcuts and cheat codes for everything. I digress and I'll get back to it. States benefit because states have to determine whether or not any of these licenses cost more or cost less. States do have the right to determine what the standards and the restrictions are. States do have the rights to request additional levels of support via taxation and so many other areas. Where the Black conservatives get these acronyms wrong, they think that it's just a liberal agenda when it comes to who manages the funding. They get the word socialism wrong completely when it comes to social unions, like unions that protect the police, unions that protect the fire department, unions that protect the teachers, unions where they're at the ports, unions in transportation. They flip-flop all the time on what they actually believe about labor and who should have the right to protect labor or unions. But all of that is socialism at its finest, by definition and in practice. And that's where Black conservatives, when you hear them flip-flopping, you'll hear those who had been raised Black Democrats or in blue, I was raised in a California state. What I would learn to be a liberal political agenda or a more inclusive political agenda, a political agenda that incorporates the challenges in the urban community, rather than being more restrictive of the challenges when they say, well, the challenges in the urban community need to be reinforced with. When you say we need better education options and to increase education outcomes, that is a more liberal, meaning we need more, better, more. More restrictive is to conserve. We need less money spent on that. We need to restrict the budget. We need to reduce the pork barrel spending. We need our budget to be smarter. That's what I'm saying. And so when the budgets start to get fought at a state level, and now it's like, well, who's providing education services? Well, you have the public education system and you have the private education system. On the conservative side of the argument, they are for private education, meaning the business. That's how it's restrictive. They say the more the public education gets funding, that's competition with the private sector. And if we want to see better education outcomes, they want to control that the budget be earmarked using like certain language that I showed out in the letter from earlier. This one here. Let me see. I think I closed it. Yeah, I closed it. All right. So I'm in the state of Arizona, which may not be relevant to everyone. But agriculture and education are important in Arizona. Exports and imports are important. And we have one of the biggest airports, so a hub. We also have access to a lot of veterans. And so serving the underserved community or being able to have conversations from a lens that understand Black first, but know that even Black first still falls as just a subgroup of this broader argument. If you want to be inclusive of Black anything, you have to first understand what are the bills. And once we found the bills, the omnibus bill is the money, that's appropriation. Who are the people who deal with those bills? Who are the chairmen of those, of all, whatever the committee is named, who are the chairmen? And who are the ranking members? And now that we have all of that, now you're into your state politics. And what are the regulations and policies between your state? For me, it is the Department of Agriculture. For me, they deal with a lot of border rights and all of those things. To me, it is a lot of First and Second Amendment. And so Arizona is a swing state. So that's Vilsack. He's over the whole bigger picture. And then in our state, it is, this. Because of so many veterans, this is a good screenshot. It's understanding connected community or being a part of the connected community. And what do Black people who do understand the benefits of citizenship and politics and economics, what does connected community mean for you in leadership? And so in the rural community, once again, it's AT&T Fiber, which I said earlier, Connected Community Solutions. You may qualify for federal government's Affordable Connectivity Program that provides a monthly benefit of $30 a month on your internet service. VA benefit eligibility for those who are Black veterans who are working on their service-connected disability rating. It means something completely different to them, but it's still connected to healthcare and access to healthcare. But it's more than that. Travel allowance, which is transportation and such. When they start moving out into the country or to the suburbs, they start losing the full benefit. They don't get public transportation. It's not there yet. Connected community service. I think that this one, even though this is the AT&T Forum, connected community service relates to our children in ways of when applying for colleges, where do they volunteer? How did they find those volunteer opportunities? How did they schedule to volunteer? And who did that? Was that the responsibility of a counselor or the parents? I.e., was that on the public education system to provide? Or was that just something that parents were doing anyway, that they just never wrote down when their children never wrote down on the application? But in any event, this top one though, the connected community, find out how to uncover the hidden talents, assets, and abilities in your neighborhood and bring them together to create a vibrant and joyful community. I like this one specifically though, which was about digital sales in a global community. It has these as resources: white papers, infographics, and ebooks. And they talk about it from these lenses: moving past challenges to unlock opportunity, and auto space, and dealerships, the key to driving dealership success. Now, again, understanding analytics, dealership means something completely different state to state. Is there anything else on the state level that I would like to share? That's my 1 hour, and I believe we have content coming up at 11. With that, I'll do what I said I would do, and I'll go into some more specifics. At my state level, which isn't applicable to other people and is not shared on the screen, because that's when they say, oh, you doing too much. And, even though I'll push back on being able to share other people's information, when it comes to politics, I don't like being influential politically unless necessary. Places like Chicago have to focus on human trafficking. Places like Atlanta have to focus on their LGBTQ allyship. Places like California have a balance on focusing on all of that. Arizona has to focus on agricultural as well as cultural. I can't say cultural to save my life. It's that last R that always hurts. Also in Arizona, they have to focus on race more than anything, because even when you look at the justice map, Arizona deals primarily with that Hispanic being a separate carve out. They don't want to be called Mexicans. They don't want to be called Latin Americans. Black, on the other hand, well, we already know our challenges. So I shared what I needed to share. So I'm done for today, my 1st hour. But here in Arizona, there's, for example, Proposition 209. And I'll give you more specifics. As it's listed, it says to reduce max interest on medical debt from 10% down to 3%. And here are some of the things that are up underneath that. In Arizona, they're looking to decrease the amount of disposable earnings subject to being garnished to no more than 10% of that individual's disposable earnings. So I'll say that once again, because repetition. They're looking to decrease the amount of disposable earnings subject to court garnishment to no more than 10% of that individual's disposable earnings. And we're going to have conversations about that in our space. Now, you know me, I'm B1 Brother Moses. I said it was a plot twist. So it seems like on a surface that decreasing the court order on disposable earnings subject to garnishment would be a good thing, right? Especially when they write it up and it's like, yeah, the court garnishing your wages, man, is a bad thing, bro. For one, I think people do need to understand a bit more about garnishment. The court order itself is where I would focus from a B1 perspective. Because what we see is that the people who are requesting these said court orders that deal with disposable earnings, at the end of the day, if they were already only focusing on 10% of your disposable, then that was already something to talk about. Not your discretionary, not your total income. If they were already only focusing on 10% of your disposable earnings, and now they want to take that down to 3%, who does that bill actually stand to impact the most once we unpacked it from a political and capital perspective? What group of marginalized, I'll just say it, I don't like playing games, single women? Y'all the ones requesting these court orders that garnish the men's wages. And if they're only going to look at 10% disposable earnings and now they're taking it down to 3%, then you got to look at the second part. Disposable earnings, take it down not just 10% to 3%, but also allowing the court to decrease the disposable earnings subject to garnishment itself. Take that down to 5%. Now, that one they say is supposed to be based on extreme economic hardship, which makes it all sound so good, so good. He's so po. The po man is so po that when they started garnishing his wages, that at first they was looking at, okay, we're going to tax you at 10%, bro. We're going to garnish your wages at 10%. He was like, nah, we can't do it. So they broke it down and said, we're going to tax you at 10% of your disposable income. So whatever's left after you've paid all of your taxes and after you've paid this and after you've paid that. And now you really only got this much left. And so now the bill or the proposition, once again, it's just what's being proposed, is to take that down to 5%. I said, man, ain't that about a bitch? Now, while I'm not one who benefits from that or is impacted by it, just because I saw it and out of all the propositions I read, I was like, yeah, that's a plot twist right there. When it was in Atlanta and they were trying to petition for it and they used their social media to have a petition, here it is in Arizona. I got a whole proposition that's really looking at it. I wouldn't want to sway any voters one way or the other, which is why I won't put that part of my opinion one way or the other on this video. Now, there are other people who claim to be Black conservatives in Arizona who have no problem weighing in. They side with the police on everything and with the protesters only when they're white and armed. Second Amendment protesters. And they side with the Second Amendment counter protesters every time, whether those Second Amendment counter protesters use their vehicles or their weapons. And that's what's happening in Tucson, Arizona. We know Arizona was flipped and turned blue. And it was so ironic because the turning point in USA, Brandon Tatum or Officer Tatum out of Southern Arizona, I believe that it was up to his cowardice, though. He was marching in the street with the bullhorn in hand, and he was advocating in the state of Arizona down in Tucson, and he's always an advocate when it's pro-police in defense of police just killed another Black person or another Hispanic person because he's former SWAT, and he can get 100,000 people just based off his facial expressions.
And I say, hey, that's that man. But when it comes to global politics, all of them Negroes lose. They take L's when they try to run real candidates. And when it came down to storming the Capitol on January 6th, he was not about that life. And the woman who did try to storm the Capitol and brush through the door was a white woman who got shot and killed on the spot on the Capitol. So while he used his media platform to advocate storming the Capitol, and while he uses his platform to rush the Capitol in Arizona, and while his platform is the reason why armed counter-protesters will show up at the polls on election day with their M16s and AR-47Us, and they're just there to secure the vote. While that side of the argument will get 300,000 views to say absolutely nothing. I'll show you the facts. And there will be 200 people at the most who could rock with B1 Brother Moses for this hour and understand that facts don't lie. The real content has been shared. We undisputed over here. It's GOAT level content. I'm B1 Brother Moses. I'll give you one more. Taxes. Another flip-flop from the black conservatives who used to be Democrats until they forgot how to read and write and do arithmetic. And so they left the Democratic plantation, broken bucks, Officer Tatum in southern Arizona, who were supposed to be Republicans and conservatives, and they were leaving the Democratic plantation at the turning point in the USA. And candidates in Arizona at the governorship level, which is the CEO-ship, like Carrie Lake or Katie Hobbs, the women. Because remember, Mark Kelly, he was the man after his wife ended up getting assassinated, right? Or it was like an assassination attempt. And so he became the man, and he's a former vet. Oh, y'all don't know Arizona politics or why Arizona became a swing state and then it was a turning point? But turning point is the black people who used to be Democrats and now they claim to be Republicans, but they don't know the definition of socialism because they're so pro-police when it's police who kill black people. But they claim to be of political consciousness. Except all their states keep losing to Democrats. Every time they use their media, they say, oh, the Democrats are responsible because the Democrats make it about race. And then they put on these black candidates like Elder Lee or Lee Elder, and not Jesse Lee Peterson, he's just media, but Lee Elder, Larry Elder, that's his freaking name. They put up their candidates who try to run and they lose bad. They get pummeled. Katie Hobbs would be the airhead. Carrie Lakes, who looks like she's one of them $5 Native American Indians. She looked like she's a hybrid of something. She looks like another usurper, like it's not just white on white on white once you get back to the 1910s on her bloodline. But she's the Republican endorsed candidate. And it's going to be a landslide. I predict a landslide. And it's still a landslide for the same reasons. The woman doesn't look as good as the other candidate. And to say it, she is the female she's running for a CEO as a woman. Excuse me, I said female. As a woman candidate, there's only 2 women candidates that are really worth even mentioning in my state. For the governor, which is the CEO-ship. The men who are the candidates are fighting for state-level senatorship, which is Mark Kelly, who's really only replacing his woman after assassination attempt, and then Blake Masters. None of these people actually liked the Maverick or candidate McCain. All of them want the endorsement because it used to be a red state, and it is a land-based or a landlocked argument state. What are the race rights? Hispanic and white people rights state. Oh, yeah. Arizona can be just as important. And Arizona started making strides in its legalization and recreational use of medicinal marijuana. And so it is another one of those major swing states. But when it comes to Black representation, even in media, Officer Brandon Tatum, he is an L when it comes to intelligence. He's an L when it comes to activism. He's a coward when it comes to actually following up on what he said he wanted to do. He did all of that fat mouthing and then didn't even show up when they stormed or on January 6th. ABL was even closer, but ABL wasn't the one saying he was going to storm the Capitol or surge on January 6th. Oh, it's going to be so epic. It's going to be that, oh, they stole, they rigged the election, they did that, they did this. Yeah. When you don't live in the South and you do live outside of the South, politics are different. Arizona is one of those states where they do walk around with their M16s and their assault rifles during the midterms, where when it's election season, race is an actual thing. And knocking on the doors during political campaigns, this is an open carry state. What are you talking about? Can't have that same conversation with people who would blame the casino for, oh, well the Migos, why didn't, he's always, no, man, proximity to Blackness is what killed the Migos takeoff and what got his homie bopped. The Second Amendment and even disarming their weapon in a public place. Man, come on, man. Those arguments don't fly during election cycles, but that's the one they always use as the criminology of Black pathology or of Blackness in general when they pathologize it using hip hop. But it was proximity to Blackness. Arizona is a gambling state. Oh, yeah, the Black conservative side, they love to criminalize Blackness. I'm like, man, what are y'all talking about? This entire stream, I gave you nothing but facts and data, and nobody can contest with that. But when it gets to this part of the conversation where race gets brought up, I'm not as sensitive as others. He has a predominantly white audience, which does deal with Hispanic white and what we would call just Mexicans. He's Black who doesn't date Black, didn't marry Black, and didn't reproduce Black. When you start to attribute coonery or self-hatred, you can put it on them. And then those people who use their badge as a manner of being able to then go into the public and exert violence against people. That's exactly that. The highest levels of attainment, he became a SWAT officer. I don't know why he resigned, but from being that, his public service. But again, I know that even being a SWAT officer meant that he was a dependent of the state, that he was a welfare recipient. His dumbass doesn't know that. He doesn't know that police funding comes from that same budget as them food stamps. That just because they've earmarked it in a different manner in the omnibus bill, which gives all of us the right to have access to those services, but his dumbass. And so he uses his experiences using violence against Black people, and then will say, well, all people commit violence, but he will use his algorithm or his platform to speak bad and demonize Black people as a SWAT officer, and became a credible source of information. The same bitch ass officer who, when he wasn't an officer, was the one who doxed Breonna Taylor and tried to say Breonna Taylor's family were drug cartel. Who's looking into his fucking finances and seeing what type of shady financing he has orchestrated? What kind of shady stock dealings he has, being in Arizona and its proximity to actual drug cartels? Who's looked in his associations and who his friends and friends of friends are to see what how does Turning Point USA get their fucking funding? If they got funding from Brandon Tatum, it is probably within 3 spheres that Brandon Tatum receives funding directly from white supremacists. I'll go on the record and say that during the midterm elections here in Arizona. It is likely that if member of Turning Point USA, Brandon Tatum, received it is more likely that he's received countless donations from tried and true, open, armed white supremacists. I'll say it open and true. And he knows it. Facts upon facts upon facts. When they talk about creating these super PACs and endorsing people as media, people who support Brandon Tatum, it is likely to find that there are open white supremacists, not just politically, not just because they believe in their Second Amendment rights, but people who are open terrorists who support Brandon Tatum. But he is the voice who can get on Fox, and he was the one who said that Breonna Taylor was like, and those protesters are linked to the cartel. So there, I'll say it. And if he wants to issue an open debate on Fox Soul, he could bring himself down to the drudgeries of the allies then. From a military to a police officer, we've had these type of contests before. Why not now here in Arizona? While I don't have to ever claim to be a Democrat or a Republican, because I know the title. If he wants to claim to be a Republican, then fuck it. I'll be a Democrat just to argue that position. Because when him and his group of degenerate, smart, but degenerate fuckboys over there, they got political capital and access. They got proximity to whiteness. But when Turning Point USA's cronies in media, not Candace Owens, I'm not here to beat up on Candace Owens. Candace Owens made a white man her husband and baby father. She made her selection long before this decision was ever made. Whether she got a perm or not was more important to the people who used to go after Candace Owens. That's not my position. My position is there are men in the same space in my own state. But before I can get there, I got to tell you that at the national level and then at the state level, and then locally, they flip-flop on taxes because they think, oh, Republicans are the ones who don't want to pay more taxes and Democrats are the ones who want all of these programs for more taxes. But every time we increased or approved any proposition or bill for funding of the police, it was requesting an increase in taxes. Now, who are the ones who always and forever request increases and support for the police? These flip-flopping stupid ass niggas, they didn't know that it was socialism, and they always say no more taxes. Republicans help protect you against taxes. But supporting the police is supporting socialism and supporting unions and supporting taxation. Debate it. Stupids. Because the black representation in politics has just always been dumb, and we learned to accept it, which is why we gave it a cartoon caricature, a coon. But they say, no, they're going to call me a coon. They go, no, you're dumb. Jesse Lee Peterson is the smartest at dumbing it all the way down and then sticking to how dumb it is. So if my job is to now work with people who've only been good at creating a dichotomous understanding, zeros and ones, it's either black and white, it's either have-nots or it's those who have. If you have not, it's a zero. If you have, then you're a one. But because they get 200, 300,000 people to watch them, I don't know if other people see it, but my Google alerts are also set to Breonna Taylor. I've said it quite a few times. I don't just follow land. I don't just follow reparations. Reparations is a algorithm or a simplified manner of saying something. So when people search for it, the word reparations, it's the simplest way of understanding what they're looking for. But once you take it a layer deeper, now you're talking about equity. I follow Tim Vilsack, who is the secretary of all of that, but it's not just him. I follow the chairman, not just that person. I also follow the freaking ranking member of both the House and Senate Health. That's how they used to spell it too. Because of speech impediments, it made English so hard that even when we start reading back, the people who used to write for the people who talk, you'll see those same variations, like filth, Now look up the word filth in old language. You'll see that it is because reading and writing, the and meant that those were two separate goals. Everybody can talk about activism. B1 Brother Moses, I'm going to give you the blueprint, but I am going to expect you to do it yourself. If you need any help or have any questions, that's all I ever asked. And if you don't want to talk about it, then we can talk about everything else. After 2 years of activism and action, racial justice is on the ballot. BK readers, we fought for equity in healthcare around COVID. We have Obamacare. For those who care today, we are fighting for equity in land ownership, not just residential. Can I scream it one more time? Can somebody write it in the chat for the people who don't get it? And while they have their groups who are already established at usurping this, and they know this process, if it's not about land ownership and you couldn't get a residence, then home equity, this is the bottom of the barrel then. If all you have is your one residence and that is your primary wealth, that is still bottom of the barrel. In any event, also follow the money. So I'm going to go on and close that down. It says, establishing a fund, Proposition 310, and this is the last one I'm going to give you. And I want to give you this one damn near word for word for these other people who consider themselves Black conservatives and they think they know anything about Thomas Sowell, Walter Williams, who were macroeconomists, but never got any fucking legislation done. Nothing in the macroeconomic to be an advantage, and they argued against affirmative action, which is why we don't like these conservative Blacks. Because they benefit from all of the work just to get to the position and argue against what was on the Democratic side. We know good and goddamn well the Black senators hadn't done shit but complain. And the ones who were working on it from an equity or a racial equity lens, they're dead, bro. They're dead. That the Congressional Black Caucus is powered and empowered by women. And that its primary focus is Africa empowerment. That if you want anything that has to do with HBCU and education, then you're going to have to go to the South. But if you're not in the South and HBCU education, then now you have to deal with integration. And if you're not dealing with integration and you're not in the South, then you're just probably one of those other niggas. But I'm Black first. These other niggas do include people who claim to be Black only. So if you rock with me and you rock with one of them, you can make sure that you share the information with them, because them niggas is weird too. But they need the land to actually, they need all the land in the world for their shooting ranges, I guess, because they can't live in the same city and not be integrated. They'll just keep doing double gainers and triple gainers. It'll never make sense. They'll always feel oppressed in society until they find a way to leave. And at some point, they will have to become the patrons of your children's business, as your children are better enabled to open up their businesses and provide the services for the community connected. I mean, the service connected community, those who actually believe in providing services to others. So that's my thing. I am a veteran, but you don't have to be a benefit for me. While I might work towards creating spaces and opportunities for veterans who have service connected disabilities, that doesn't have to be your primary focus. While my information may specifically help, like getting down to the nitty gritty, disabled veterans in Maricopa County, why my information doesn't have to be limited to disabled veterans with PTSD that are male and have not been able to receive services because there are no other facilities within 10 miles of their home location. That's as specific as B1 Brother Moses gets with the reparations argument. And what I do as a leader, anything closer than that is too fucking personal. Now you're in my personal and private. I can tell you about taxation, but I want to do it in their own words in the very same way I do my plot twists when it comes to dealing with what we deal with in Black YouTube. All right. And again, always being willing to push the envelope just a little bit further. They say it ain't official unless you show your face. This is the ballot. And they hate when you do this, which is why it gets real heavy and why they say, oh, we need to block that because this is political. But word for word, Proposition 310 referred to the people. Again, when they give us these ballots and the democratic process, they're giving us a piece of paper and saying, what do you think about this? All right. So that being said, referred to the people. So it's by the people of the people. The people are saying, hey, we got to ask y'all about this one here. By the legislature. So by the people who are inside that building, the Capitol office or whatever it is, once we've elected a representative and we told them that they have the budget, they got the treasury, they got all the money. Now we're going to, somebody went and wrote a letter and said, hey, we need some money. And then they said, well, if you need money, you need to be a legitimate business, a small business. Now, if it's a small business, your business should have a, see, this is where I would have sent the offering tray around. Let me drop my own PayPal right now because I'm finna close out right now. This is the money. I'm finna close. I need an organ right now. I'm finna preach right now. I'm finna read from the word right now. It's just not the word of God. It's the word of the ballot. Since they told us to believe in this political process, I'm finna close. Oh, let me put on a suit jacket. I need a suit jacket and a tie on right now because I'm finna close right now. Somebody need to hear this message right now. I'm finna read from the word right now. Motherfuckers. Referred to the people by the legislature relating to taxation benefiting fire districts. A yes vote shall have the effect of establishing a fire district safety fund, increasing the transaction privilege, sales, and use tax, so sales and use tax, by 0.1% from January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2042. I'm going to put that on the screen. Because that's all they need. I'm finna close. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. Glory. Oh, Lord. Glory. Glorify. Glory. Glorify. Ain't that what they need right there? They need somebody to hoop and holler right there, don't they? Ain't that the spot where they supposed to pass out the tithes and offerings tray and hoop and holler? Glory, glory, glory. Oh, glory, glory. Man, pass that offering tray around. Tax increase of 0.1%. Now, 1%. What is 1%? Because they only want 0.1% for the next 20 years. And they asking for taxation for the fire department. And if you say yes because you believe the fire department provides public safety, then it doesn't seem like a lot. And it's only asking for 20 years, but you're asking people who don't know whether or not they love Black women. And there's only a few of us where I live. The ones who live where I live, they need to know how these type of bills and policies are both written and how they impact us. And when they start asking for money for 20 years, nobody else knows. What's the problem is, oh, glory, oh, glory, oh, glory, glory, glory. Oh, Father. Did somebody reach out to their father in a church and turn politics into a church where they said, well, here we assemble. We are God, as we are gathered here today. And they need the tithes and offerings from the trustee. They made sure at the bottom of the ballot, at the bottom of, oh, glory, glory, glory. They said it in the word. They said, oh, glory. They said, say it with your chest, as if I had the auditorium of 200,000 people, as if I'm not sitting in my own work office. Oh, glory. Glory, Father. You ain't going to get one amen. You ain't going to get one amen. You ain't going to get one amen. But they going to say yes to Proposition 10 and then say that they left the Democratic plantation, that they are no longer a part of that plantation because they are now proud conservatives. And they don't believe in taxation like that. But I can show you the proposition on taxes. And I can show you where they want to word it as reducing medical debt from 10% to 3% for that mother who has to pay herself. But when the mother petitions the court and the court says, well, we got to garnish this man's wages, they'll say, well, that one, glorify. They'll say, that woman lied. They'll say everything. But Proposition 209, if you vote yes for that, it sounds like you're voting yes to reduce the interest on medical debt from 10% to 3%. But what it actually is not only do you want to reduce it from 10%, it's already on their disposable income. I'm not talking about all of their income, single mother. It's just what was disposable at 10%. Do you want to reduce that now down to 5% for the next 20 years? Oh, glory, glory, Father. They're going to put the tithes and offerings on the ballot, but they don't know what they signing, because if you say yes, well, that might work. It might not work in your favor, because it's already a 10% reduction. And then they're saying, well, we might need to reduce that permanently, and then even more from there, while at the same time we want to raise some taxes. We're going to raise some taxes for the next 20 years. But that child, no, we don't need coverage for that child for 20 years. That should be on the parent. But the state going to get paid one way or the other. And I hope you know that. And while a woman CEO, well, her name could either be Carrie Lake or Katie Hobbs. They both going to support the establishment. Both of them are here to argue that we need stronger policing and we need stronger investments in education. We need to protect our veterans. And then they say at a local level, we need our local partners to be able to do better business. And then they say that's why I'm running for governor. And I respect women's rights. And I'm going to fight for you. I fought for our parents. I fought for our students. I fought for our teachers. I fight for education. I fight for our communities. I fight for security in our communities. I fight for police. I fight for the fire departments, which is why I'm for it. And they just work that one on in there that it's going to increase taxes, but they're supposed to be on the Republican side of this ticket. And then when we go to the national level and have these same conversations, it is about land and it's about education. And I can show you the numbers. I can give it to you in their own voice. Oh, my goodness. Political plot twist. It's just going to take me a little longer to do it, but y'all got y'all talking notes now. Y'all know what's up. And if anybody knows Brandon Tatum and want to challenge that dude personally, go right ahead. A person through a person, I know we can get the message that was utter cowardism when he did not support all of those Turning Point members who he told to go down there and storm Washington, D.C., January 6th. Like a coward, he stayed home. And that white woman who got killed doing what he encouraged, yes, that's cowardism. And while his cowardism allowed him to escape from being prosecuted with the rest of those fucking weirdos and quacks and white supremacists who fund his platform, I'll tell you this right now. I have a need right now for y'all to help me. I have a need right now for y'all to help me right now. And that need is not for $1. I need for whoever knows who that motherfucker is to send him one flying turd. That's all he really deserves. Just send him a shithead emoji. That's all the attention that he actually needs. That level of cowardism, even the SWAT could not prepare him to stand on his own principles because he's baseless and degenerate like the manosphere he's connected to. And I ain't going to sit here and preach about it. I'm going to get y'all back the rest of y'all day. At 11 o'clock, we got more content on the way. I got my notification earlier. If you didn't get your notification about Grown Woman Vibes, man, you need to start getting reacquainted with social media as these spaces open up. Now isn't the time to withdraw your support for those of us who have been attacked by smear campaigns in our real lives. And just because we've gotten into the election cycle, and we know that here comes Trump and here comes Obama and here comes the candidates for the next 2 years, it's really going to focus on race. All I hope that I did today was spend 90% of my time on the solution and 10% on what the problem is, even though y'all click. When I have a problem with somebody, my camera's on and you see me. The tooth out and everything, tooth in, it doesn't matter. Fuck that fake shit. We got work to do. B1 Network. There's my salute. There's my content. Y'all know. B1. Man, the pastor was like, damn, who the hell? They were like, you can be in a mega church with that voice right there. They were like, well, damn. Ain't that what they do? Because that's the word. And in the beginning was the word, and that's the word. No, the word is, why ain't none of these congressional black caucus and politicians able to do what B1 Brother Moses did for the, man, I tell you, man, look, we're going to need some help. And I put it out there. Y'all got it now. A plot twist. B1 Network, B1 Brother Moses, that's all I got, and I'm out. 15 minutes. Get hydrated. Get some breakfast or something, man. And then we're going over there with Grown Woman Vibes. Starts at 11, I believe. Oh, follow her on Instagram. Instagram, when I turned back on my Instagram, which I had gone social media black. I couldn't take it no more. And so I slowly started to turn them back on. Yes, they're still having those same messages. Yes, the messages that we were fighting against, those are now viral almost instantly now. Those same algorithms about passport and travel bros and all of that shit. Oh, it's viral now, for real. I hadn't even turned this shit on. I would just basically see them pop up like, oh, now they're talking about passports. I remember we used to talk about that. I saw SYSBM, SYSBM, the shit that we were laughing at. And when we stopped laughing and exposed the tenants, no, nigga, that's accepted. That's accepted culture. That's not counterculture. Counterculture now is the people who are married. Like, you can't make this shit up. You can't make it make sense. So either which side of the coin you stand on, Manosphere 4, whatever that is, that's them. Shit, I'm B1 Brother Moses. Y'all know where I stand. And I just saluted like 4 times. You know I'm getting older because you know them old folks, how many times you got to say bye to an old person on the phone? See, if you don't talk to your elders on the phone, that might be one. Right. It might be one of the reasons why, because once you start getting a little older, you got to say bye like 17 times. You got to say the same thing that you just said like 7 times. Like, Grandma, you just told me that. Uncle Mo, you just told me that, bro. I got it now. Black folks are going after land. There's different government programs, education, research. You got to get if you want to get skills, if you want to, what would you do with an acre? What would you do with it? You're thinking about it from these lenses, being able to have that conversation. Right. That's what we're working on. Healthcare was actually achieved through Obamacare. Now we're looking at land ownership because we know there's 2 different things. Residential property was redlining. The banks being willing to have that conversation required them being able to open up their doors to diversity and inclusion. Diversity and inclusion worked. They got a famous white woman who's now training white women on how to be better allies. But in the interim, the Black folks who are teaching people to be allies in the first place, predominantly Black women, the most educated, fastest rising entrepreneur group who left corporate America, they want their land. Long story short. And they don't need to be preyed on in the same manner that they were preyed on in their own households by the men they loved. They don't need to be preyed on in the same manner that veterans and elders get preyed on. And they definitely don't want to get preyed on by the same folks who claim to be Black only. Oh, I can help you with your financial shit. Oh, you need these trade lines and all of those shits. Those motherfuckers that claim to be Black only, they don't want you using the government because those government resources have forms of protection to where if any fraud happens, there is some shit that can happen to where you, FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, up to $250,000. You work with one of those Black only scammers and them Garveyite scammers who are trained under those schools, you're not protected. They want you to invest in something that's not on the stock market because once it fails, it's like, oh no. He was like, it wasn't even a publicly listed company. Oh, that's our problem. That's because the Black community, we don't have enough of our businesses that are on there, which is why you need to invest in my cousin Pookie, who got this $500 business, right? And it's a $500 business flip model where all you need to do is put in that $500 and this is how it breaks down. And this is the marketing and this is all of this, that. Here's the actual product right here. Man, I'll be like, man, if you don't, I'll be like, go ahead. What I say, I'll be like, man, go ahead. Talk about it. Let me know. Run me them numbers. Nah, man, I need to see the actual numbers. I'm somebody who believes in the data and the statistics. If you can't show me that, then I don't want to believe it. Like, if you can't show me what 1/10 of 1% is on the screen right now, I'll be like, hey, just write that down right there. Write 1/10 of 1%. Write it in number form for me. They'd be like, nah, they got 8% returns. I'd be like, okay, write an 8% return on paper for me. Can you show me that in a calculator? And you got to dummy up with them. Like, even the people who call your phone, like, are you voting for Carrie Lake? I'd be like, nigga, no, I used to watch Ricky Lake. What the fuck are you talking about? Your punk ass out of, are you voting for Carrie Lake? Nigga, do you remember Ricky Lake? Nigga, if you don't remember Carrie Lake, then we ain't even beginning to have a conversation. What the hell do you think am I voting on Hispanic politics for? Nigga, you and them white people that are voting on all of that shit, y'all don't even know what you're talking about. And now you got an operations center or a call center full of underprivileged minimum wage workers in a state that doesn't want to increase minimum wage. If you don't get the fuck out of here talking to me about that bullshit, you know how long they're going to be working for minimum wage and for farm payroll, how they got to keep making exemptions for farm payroll. That's why Arizona is so important. Bet y'all ain't know that, right? Because payroll has it's different than the other payroll, right? For you landowners versus the people who want or aspiring landowners. If it's farmland, it's a different form of payroll. Y'all ain't even know that yet. See, I'm dropping gems and I was supposed to be gone, but I'm like that auntie right now. From January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2042. And it's simply called the fund. And a lot of people won't catch that. Do you support the fund? In the previous part of the presentation I showed you where it was like, it's simply called the programs. And that's all they say. Oh, you don't support government programs? It's simply called the program. You either get with the program. When they wrote it down, they put it in air quotes and everything. But even when you look at it, it's called the program in form of legislation. SMART. And it's literally called SMART. And then you find the bill. But understand the process. Understand what politics is, that building. Why are they there? What are they talking about? What is appropriations? What is a bill? There's one untouchable bill. It's the Godfather bill. I don't know what acronym I wish I had an engaged chat that would be willing to engage. What other words do you want to use for omnibus bill? Because every time we say it, it doesn't seem to make sense when people are talking about reparations. They don't know where the money would come from. And so they don't know the term omnibus bill. for money that's already allocated, let alone if they're trying to recreate. Oh, the government has to create a new. What you mean a new program? The bank is right. I'm done. B1 Brother Moses, that's all I got for real this time, and I'm out. Bio break, and then I'm joining the movement, man. Get with the movement, though. Follow us on IG. I won't even drop my own IG tags and things like that, but I'm on IG. I'm on Facebook. If you really want to get with the business, I don't go to LinkedIn to like have conversations on LinkedIn, really, because that is all the key business decision makers and such, and you never know what your influence would do. But Instagram, Facebook, man, y'all know how to get in touch. B1 Brother Mo, man, shoot me a message, a friend through a friend. I got to do something like this. I got to let y'all know what's coming. If I'm going to do content, then they got a donkey of the day if we go with white media. So I'm going to do the dog of the day, man. Like, we got to give somebody the dog head in order to keep it interesting and to start streamlining it. Because I can deliver content, but I don't want to deliver 2-hour-long content every time. Macroeconomics, well, there's people who already talk about Bitcoin. So all I would do is just show you what the numbers are in an update and show you where Bitcoin is at for the day. Anything after that in the conversation around Bitcoin, I would defer to somebody else other than just telling you what the number is, whether or not that number went up or down. Also in content would be coffee break. Every once in a while, popping on a live stream just to do some coffee chats. That doesn't sound like a problem, but to me, it's all work. And I don't much like the idea of work, especially being that work is the thing that they say, oh, we doing the work. We doing the work. I'd be like, well, that makes me want to change my whole slogan because I know we have work to do. And if this is what y'all consider the work, then I don't even like that shit no more. They'll call it grifting because once you started doing the research and understanding what are the opportunities or challenges amongst the very diverse Black community, and all of these line of thoughts from the Baptist, Christian, Jehovah's Witness, Seventh-day Adventist, all of these folks, and then the African and Egypt and whatever, Hebrew only, and all of these other places. There's so many, but they're all Black identified. They're all Black identified, basically, to me. And you don't have to grift. I believe in business. I believe in civil rights. And so I really don't care too much more for learning too much about their God. If they think that they have a different God, I understand now that that's one of the conversations, like God in politics is like, even on the conversation, man, how y'all doing, man? Is there anything other that y'all community? But giving them a form of appreciation of saying they have their own community, they have their own form of empowerment. I think that's respectful, right? Those two layers of respect alone should be enough to help them see the benefit in the information. Other than that, they're Black only and they need to get the fuck up out of here. You know what I'm talking about? Black only is a delusion. These motherfuckers be living, oh no, the Black person owns this house. Okay, one more layer. The Black person owns the building, one more layer up. The Black person owns the street, one more layer up. The Black person owns this. I'm like, damn, man, I'm glad that you're able to keep putting money back in some Black person's hands that many times. But at some point, you'll understand that even all of that Blackness is still within the context of you wanted to be integrated. And if you did not want to be integrated, your ass would not live in Harlem. Nigga, your ass would, no, I wanted to be integrated within my own community context of being, I do stuff for Black, like, man, shut your ass up. Stop fucking lying. Shut your lying dumb ass up. The first thing you do is look at their car. Nigga, is your car even made in Detroit? Nigga, no, nigga. Niggas prefer they big ticket purchases. Nigga, that money is typically going somewhere else. And then once they get into the finance conversation, oh no, I own so many properties and shit. I'll be like, yeah, so why are you now doing education on history and African rocks? Nigga, nigga, you got all these properties and shit. You done got so conscious, right? And you managing this business and these people come to you for help. But if you look at the 90%, like once you say yeah and you start accepting it, okay, tell me more. And you start assuming that they are who they say they are. And you're like, okay, so where can I find you? And you go to where they're accessible and you look at what they actually do. You be like, nah, nigga, 90% of your time that I see here, 90% of that time, that shit ain't black shit. It's just dumb. All it is conversations about absolutely nothing. And that's the high percentage. Now, I know for a fact that people's passion projects are what they wanted to do with their life, which is why I'm saying, look, don't be offensive. I'm going to try my best to not be like offensive of black people who believe. But that's it. That's about as far as it gets. I can say the same thing for myself. B1 Brother Moses, I believe in some of those same principles of financial literacy. But if somebody is advocating for you to not use federally, don't go to the white man, the federal system, don't believe in banking and don't, what? No, you need to use my cousin because he has $500 and all of that shit. Man, there's some Garveyites that never had to wrestle with the fact that Garvey he committed mail fraud, that he wanted access to Americans who had bank accounts. That way, whenever they transacted, he would get that little $5. And his best access to those working class Black Americans was through the church. I don't give a fuck what y'all say. They're dealing with that on their conscience. And now that they're small business people or they're small business conscious, they're using that same caveat. Now, me, I can say the same for myself, except that I ain't asking y'all for shit. I just go live when the White House airs it. I'll go live when the USDA has it. I'll go live when it's actual politics and bills that impact us of those three layers. And if y'all want to support the movement, then one day I'll feel comfortable enough sharing my own to be a recipient of people who like to support messages. But no, I'm not here to help you with your finances. If you need help with finances, first and foremost, that's a Googleable thing. But if you need somebody who can personally talk to you about it, yes, I do know people who can talk to you about it. But we got to do better protecting each other. And I don't think that we can if our message at the end of the day is we don't need to be integrated. We don't need to seek white approval. Don't apply. Oh, the white man. What? Them niggas be dumb. They be absolutely dumb. Now I only have 3 minutes, and I just said I'm gone, but I'm gone. See y'all on the other side. In fact, I need all my 3 minutes. Bitch, what you thought this was? I thought I was leaving like that. I need me a sexy outro, man. I need a sexy exit, man. Everybody gets a sexy exit. I need a sexy exit. I'm B1 Brother Moses. That's all I got, and I'm out. B1 salute. That seems to be right, and that's what I do physically and everything like that. But I done gave y'all gems and where are my fire signs? I had a woman in Atlanta say, y'all gonna give me my fire signs and shit? Like, I really got to come up with my own emoji, like the cross swords, man. Cross the swords, man. We've been double-crossed enough, man. We tired of this shit. I'm B1 Brother Moses, man. We've been double-crossed enough, man. When you expect loyalty, there's going to be 2 L's you're going to have to take, just like you might end up asking why at least twice if you spell it out for motherfuckers. When you're real, you're real, and when you know, you know. I'm B1 Brother Moses. That's all I got, and I'm out. Hey, I need to cross swords, though. People who know, man, cross the swords, man. We need to tell the world to take a time out, man. And so we got B1 the GOAT. We got the GOAT that you drop. You got the eagle that you drop. Kev, can I get the cross swords one time? I'm going to have to own it, man. That's mine, man. We've been double-crossed enough. We've been backstabbed enough. Backstabbing always seems to happen with people who are close enough to get close to you. And once they get close to you, you be like, man, pull a dagger out one time. Now it's time for some healing and reciprocity. Reparations to me means political, social, and economic. And anybody willing to tell you that it doesn't take all three, they're lying to you. Now, I'm showing you that today. Tell somebody to debate me. Tell somebody to actually debate me who actually has facts. Or tell somebody, hey, y'all should have Moses on. That's out of everybody I've heard who knows his shit. if there's one person who I would say knows his shit, yeah. And now I'm done. Showboat a little bit on the end. Showboat just a little bit. You got to be your own politician. Just a little bit. We finding happiness together. Mummy Mountain is real. Mammy Mountain is what we talk about. But Mummy Mountain is in Arizona. And I'm B1 Brother Moses, B1 Network correspondent here in Arizona. Man, I got to own my whole title. I got to own all that shit. I got to own it all. B1 Network, B1 Brother Moses. That's all I got. And I'm out. Yeah, I'm working on that. Cross swords. I accept it now. Cross the swords. I'll accept it.